Welcome back, folks. Today we're going to get into the video series which synthesizes art and religion, the abstract world and spirituality um, through Shakespeare's sonnets. In this series, as discussed in the introduction, we're going to discover and discuss infinity as that which is the goal and function of religion to offer paths to societies and communities and individuals. Um, Paths to justifying in self and understanding. So yeah, we're going to discover infinity as that which is the function of religion to offer to people, to offer paths to an understanding about. Um, we're going to see that infinity is manifest in our world in many different ways. That it is the aspect of our reality or our surrounding which human consciousness in particular has recognized. That is, our condition as humans is a consciousness or an awareness of patterns and identification of patterns, which include the patterns which are endless or limitless. So, human particular consciousness coming from this infinity by recognizing it, a degree of consciousness which includes it. That infinity is, in fact, what we require religion to deal with, only in that we need to use spiritualities, religions, God systems in order to reconcile a uniqueness marked consciousness with it. Irrefutable particularity seems to the self to be in contradiction to this infinity and the manifestations and implications of infinity. Um, the manifestations of infinity seem to be beyond what our unique self identifying consciousness can reckon with and deal with and interact with and be part of. And so it is the function of religion, the function of spiritualities and God systems and mythologies to help us to not only cope with it, but then to begin to interact in a way which reflects reconciliation with it. We're going to see that infinity is infinity and our experiences related to it and its existence, and in fact the limitless or infinitely particular aspect of self, which is our uniqueness, a limitlessly particular way of being irrefutably particularly related to all these things. um, this is what we need and require art in the abstract world to allow into human expression. We require the abstract world, a world which acts in a way that the physical world does when looked at and treated in a way according to the implications of infinity. We require the abstract world in order to include infinity and all related things into human expression. So it is therefore the most particular function of art to allow infinity into human expression. And we'll see that this infinity, oneness, wholeness, endlessness, limitlessness, indefinability, bothness, duality, whatever you want to call it, is what artists and prophets, whether consciously or unconsciously, are talking about, are discussing, are using art to include. Um, we see that they're all somehow entangled with, or their inspiration is sourced in, or they're using, or discussing, or including um, infinity somehow. Might be that they have reconciled infinity and consciousness, and the subsequent degree and type of interaction they have with the world so inspires them, gives them such information that they require an abstract world, and feel the need to pass that information and experience and the reflections and benefits of it to others through the abstract world. Um, it may be simply that that which they see is infinitely particular. They're passing a unique image. And anyways, it is the artists and the prophets, the messengers, the apostles, the thinkers, the philosophers that move into this abstract space where information is passed, perceived, where it gains its meaning and its truth in the same way that does an infinity including universe. that is by relationship, as a plexus of relationships, um, and therefore relative meaning arising as isomorphic property and quality between things, um, able to map an infinity, including world. And so we see then further that it's the artist prophet, like Shakespeare and Bach and Da Vinci and many others, um, who are explicitly discussing and engaging metaphysics inside the abstract world, as well as discussing how the abstract world allows them to express metaphysical information, information about the fundamental nature of things, and therefore about infinity and its implications. How infinity and its implications led them to needing the art form, what their experience was in the process of the art form, how it many times was the art form itself that embodied and allowed them, led them, or gave them empirical evidence of the infinity and its manifestations that they had um, the tendency to recognize and to find valuable. So, again, that's the overarching theme. That's our subject matter. That's what we're doing here, discussing Shakespeare's sonnets. We are identifying him as the artist prophet, as somebody who's doing this explicitly, discussing infinity through the world that allows infinity into human expression, the abstract world, and then also discussing the abstract world and its nature inside of the abstract world as being integrally related to, um, as being sourced from, and the source of the values of this human, particularly recognized metaphysical surrounding. Humans in particular not only are unique and recognize irrefutable particularity, but also the manifestations of infinity. We recognize also infinity, limitlessness, or endlessness in our surroundings. We've ever taken account of uncontrollable, indefinable, unknowable factors and forces, dualities, bothness, paradox. And it is the function of religion to help us to reconcile these two, to come into an interaction with the world and with ourselves, which uses both our full degree of consciousness. And so acts or interacts, that is, lives, human particularly, um, in the way that we are designed to, that we are best suited to and ready to, and through and from which we expect to gain our nourishment from, to benefit from the interaction with the world. Um, and further, that it is the abstract world which not only completely embodies and reflects a world which includes infinity, um, is itself empirical evidence of the consequence of energy, which is an implication of the metaphysical context being discussed, but is our way to discuss it as humans. So let's get into it. The first, uh, right, in all the videos, we'll start out by doing a manifestation of infinity, which is engaged. Uh, so this manifestation, the first one we'll use transition. Transition uh, is the manifestation of infinity, which is available to the empirical evidence of is available to all people across all time. So this is a very powerful manifestation of infinity, very useful, and is also why it appears throughout. It pervades almost all religions, spiritualities, mythologies, god systems across human history. Um, Transition. The point at which one thing ends and the other begins is indefinable. If you make a cross in the 2D, sign it like the Stavros, the cross, the very point in the center of that, you cannot tell if it comes from the top, the bottom, the left, or the right. And that's an indefinability from transition between two things, which can help the mind to understand that there is this boldness or indefinability or endlessness of potentials. Um, it can begin to help us see, by having such evidence, that we exist in a world in which this is part of the reality. Um, the prayer hands we discussed. Um, when we do this, and so many different spiritualities and religions do this, what we do is we take the right and the left. You could think of this in the abstract context of dance or movement, um, using the body, the variables of the body, space, time, in order to create an abstract context, just like a canvas, but with body parts and movements and space. And if you take this and this, the two separate things, and you go like this, they are now one thing. And there is a point, these are embodying an isomorphism, a point where one thing ends and the other one begins, where we can't tell, can never tell, or quite point out exactly where that is. Where exactly does that happen since they're touching? And that point where the two atoms meet, the very smallest material form we could ever imagine, the point where those two meet is an indefinableness, which is very, we are able to intuit that indefinable point. We're able to imagine and see that and recognize, across many circumstances and psychologies, we can see that that's evidence of an indefinableness in our reality. Um, that transition, the moment when my words come, energy of my thought, only there because I ate and converted matter into energy, goes up here, comes out as sound, sound itself, just energy floating through the air, reaches you, goes into your ears, and becomes energy in your mind, the sound of my voice, then interpreted as thoughts. Now, your thoughts in your head, not only the sounds themselves repeating in your head or resonating inside of your cranium, but also your opinions of them. This transition, at what point does it stop being mine and start being yours? That's another indefinable point, another point where we see manifest, um, the fact that infinity is included into our reality. The moment between wake and sleep, the moment between being alive and being dead, um, physically. Uh, so we see, transition is a really powerful, um, manifestation of infinity in our world, which is going to be engaged somehow in what we're discussing, in the art we're discussing, Shakespeare's sonnets. Um, Again, we did the prayer hands. We could think about the movement practice of qigong as sort of like a a metaphysical text, but instead of a text, it's a series of movements. It's a way of writing or notating, metaphysical information. They use the prayer hands, as well as Durr's prayer hands, that, the more famous, not more famous, the well known image. Um, and then Hermes was the other example that I chose as representations of this, explicit representations of this in art, in abstract worlds, whether they be god systems, mythologies, paintings, whatever they may be, abstract worlds. So Hermes and any of the trickster transition deities are psychopomps. Um, they're the messengers between the worlds, between the mortals and the immortals. But they're the connectors of the heavens and earth. Um, and this is because they are the ones which, uh, by holding this transition, show the way that they embody and show a path to reconciling infinity in consciousness. And if you do that, if you see that, oh, in all of these transitions in our world, there's all of this infinity, that infinity is here too with the specific things, then you start to come into an interaction with things around you which reflect infinity. That is, you see that they are at one with you. In infinity, we're all part of one thing, we're all part of the greatest thing, we all have a limitless potential for meaning and truth, and so we come into this selfless interaction with other things. It's when we do that that we reveal the unique or the irrefutably particular way that we're related to them just in this moment. And as we're always changing and they're always changing and everything's always changing, so that way of being irrefutably particularly related or connected to all other things is always changing. And so what happens is when we're able to, whether intentionally, consciously, autonomously or not, come into that selfless interaction, that interaction reflecting Hermes and Troth and any of these transition deities, that reflects our reconciliation, our understanding of the implications of this transition property. Um, when we come into this selfless interaction, we reveal a new way of being meaningfully related to any other thing. A new thought, if we're selfless enough, a new thought that we cannot intend or foresee pops into our head. And this is the consciously witnessable manifestation of our way of being connected to this other thing, related, irrefutably, particularly connected in the plexus to this one particular thing at that one moment, which, as all things are ever changing, that's always going to change. And so what we see is that this opens up a limitless amount of possibilities, amount of potential meanings or values or consequences or truths in others and in the self and in our way of being related. And this limitless is the limitlessness in the specific. That is, it's what takes the mundane, approachable, specific, detailed, absolutely particular, irrefutably particular things in our physical world, our self, my nose hair, that tree's leaf, that one single rabbit right there, nothing else, just that. It takes uniqueness, irrefutable particularity, and it connects it to the infinite. It reconciles it with it. So we see that the infinite, the limitless, the God, the heavens, in the specific, the earth, the mundane, the particular, arrives because irrefutable particularity, uniqueness, is actually an ever changing way of being related, meaningfully connected to an ever changing set of others. So it is these transition gods which connect the heavens and the earth. It's when humanity gets the message, when humans get the message of the transition, reconcile infinity and consciousness, that we can become the links between the heaven and the earth. The heavens and the earth, we can become the ones that say, okay, I'm able, by having reconciled this concept and consciousness, to come into a degree and type of interaction selfless enough with those things around me to reveal my ever changing and therefore my absolutely new way of being uniquely, irrefutably, particularly related meaningfully to this other just in this moment. And so when we do this, that we've revealed more. We've revealed more of the limitless potential in the specific other. We've seen more of the limitless in the specific. And so we've become the link between the heavens, or everything that's related to infinity or endlessness or limitlessness, and the specific, or earth or mundane or physical. Um, Okay, in these works that we're going to discuss, we will um, address certain implications of infinity. First, as we were just discussing, that uniqueness, or that uniqueness is just an irrefutably particular way of being related to all other things in an ever-changing and limitless context. So our irrefutable particularity, or our uniqueness, is just our way of being related to other things, but in a context where there's an endless amount of other things, and those other things are always changing. And so our uniqueness is absolutely specific, irrefutably particular, but always changing. This is, again, the limitless in the specific. The second implication of infinity is that in an infinite plexus, and according to the previous statement, um, all things of every type, state, nature, appearance, aspect have an equally limitless potential for meaning and value and truth. If this is the case, that there's never changing infinite plexus, and all things really are just what they are not, we are defined by our relationships to all other things, then, since this is never changing plexus, we have an equally limitless potential for values or meanings or truths or ways of being related. Then, third implication that we're going to see, again, is all things of every type, state, nature, aspect, and appearance are themselves a part of whatever this most miraculous, largest, greatest thing are. Whatever you can think of, whatever God is, whatever infinity is, the wholeness, the oneness, whatever you want to call it, the Brahman, Nirvana, whatever you want to say. whatever everything of every type and state, whether it's energy or matter or inanimate or animate or visible or invisible or here or there, um, or a thought or a thing, whatever it is, all of those things are part of whatever the whole thing is. And so, because of this, they're also part of whatever the most miraculous or incredible or greatest thing is. And because of this, they're also all at one. We're all connected. We're all part of one thing, and in that way, unified. And so, unified in the most miraculous thing, we find that everything is worthy of love, praiseworthy, worthy of fascination, and of unassuming, of complete giving of the self. Another implication of infinity. And the last one is deathlessness, touched on a lot in the introduction, but the idea here is that there is in as an implication of infinity, we see that death, physical demise, is just a change of state within the same thing. You can't disappear from the thing that you're in. Um, we simply become a different uh, type of thing within it. And so this creates a deathlessness by change, a sort of entropic deathlessness. And then we also have this idea of immortality in the word. In a sub implication of infinity is that in infinity, where everything of every type, state, nature has equally limitless potential, so life itself is just interaction of any kind. And where that is the case, and where also another sub-implication of infinity is that everything of every type, state, nature has an equally limitless potential. Energy is the same as matter. That's not the same, but it has an equal potential. So energy is equivocated. Where energy is equivocated and life is interaction, so our energy, the energy of our thought, for example, hence the halo and every in all iconography, um, thought somehow preserved and passed into posterity beyond our physical life can and does, as we all know, come into a very real and potentially extremely consequential interaction with ourselves, with posterity. Um, and we see this interaction, this consequential, meaningful, redefining interaction as life itself, where the unique thought is preserved. The unique thought of self is the self as much as the physical self is. So if that is preserved and it's able to come into interaction in the future beyond the physical, um, man, beyond the physical organism's duration, then that is the self interacting beyond physical death, truly as consequentially and really as if the person was physically there, into posterity immortally. And this is the immortality in the written word, which is a huge part of the Bible, biblio, and just meaning the book, um, and the word that's discussed within it, using words. Um, so let's jump into and just see if we can very quickly, without getting too caught up, which is the tendency here, touch on a couple, just touch on a couple excerpts to give us some tangible evidence, some examples from artworks. Let's take those big theoretical propositions and tie them into a work of art and see how an artist prophet is able to express them through art, needs art to express them, and embodies the concept itself inside of the abstract world. So I'm just gonna jump in and read through, recite um, Shakespeare's sonnet number 94, and then just take a couple small points, just point out a couple little things in there which are reflecting these, so that you can read through it and think for yourself, having this coming in with this informed point of view, with something to look for and a place to look. Give yourself a chance to see that he is discussing these things, and to learn, see for yourself how to interpret for yourself, how is he manipulating abstract variables, words, in the abstract context, plexus, in order to represent and discuss and present and illuminate the properties which are the isomorphic representation, the the mapping of this infinity including world. Um, so they that have, he Shakespeare says, Sonnet 94, they that have power to hurt and will do none, that do not do the thing they most do show, who, moving others, are themselves as stone, unmoved, cold, and to temptation slow. They rightly do inherit heaven's graces, and husband nature's riches from expense. They are the lords and owners of their faces, others but stewards of their excellence. The summer's flower is to the summer sweet, though to itself it only live and die. But if that flower with base infection meet, the basest weed outbraves its dignity. For sweetest things turn sourest by their deeds. Lilies that fester smell far worse than weeds. Beautiful, fun, wonderful, incredibly meaning holding. So let's jump into it. Memorable. That's a big note here. We're going to see that. Uh, we're going to talk a little bit about how Shakespeare how he maps and discusses certain aspects and facets of an infinity including world. Not only how it affects everything, how it affects humans, where it's sourced from, what it's needed for, what happens when you start to deal with it, its benefits, its implications, everything. But also that we're going to discuss some explicit variables, things that he chooses in order to guide us, to make sure that we know that we're talking about this, that we're not talking about lilies. We're using them for something else to pass a message. Um, so let's start. Let's see which of our implications will we start with. Let's look for an example of this irrefutable particularity thing, this idea that uniqueness um, comes from relationship and is a limitless aspect of specificity. Um, it's interesting. He says they are the lords and owners of their faces, others but stewards of their excellence. So in 94, Sonnet 94, what's happening in this structure of message passing pervades many of the pervades the sonnets, is that in the beginning we're shown what our subject is. What are we specifically talking about? We're shown which aspect or facet of the metaphysical journey are we talking about. And here we're discussing a type of person. We're discussing the type of person. Sometimes it is the type of person which has succeeded at the metaphysical journey, and sometimes it's the antithesis of a thing or a way of treating things or a way of being. Here we have somebody who is we're discussing what is a successful person on the metaphysical journey. So we're discussing this type, and he uses a number of examples, says it in a few ways in order to make it irrefutable, indubitable what he's talking about. He's talking about this type of person. It's the one that inherits heaven's graces and husband's nature's riches from expense. Um, these people who do that, who husband nature's riches from expense, who moving others are themselves as stone, are the lords and owners of their own faces. So their identity, their self, their individuality is individuated in a Jungian sense. That is, they truly are themselves, is what we're being offered. This idea of lords and owners everywhere are really just related to the stewards of their own excellence. Um, The true lords and owners own their selves. They own their faces. They own their own self, their uniqueness. Um, and they own it because they husband nature's riches from expense. That is, they come into an interaction with the world around them, which doesn't expend, it doesn't finish or expend, it doesn't terminate, spend, destroy, send away, eliminate, complete, use to its end the things that are around them. Nature, the world around us, the approachable mundane, gains its value, its worth, its richness when it is husbanded, when it is cared for. That is, when somebody, this type of person, comes into a selfless enough, giving enough, praising enough, unassuming enough interaction, degree and type of interaction with the world around them, one which interacts with the things around them knowing that they have limitless potential. It's when we do that that we reveal this way of being connected to them, irrefutably particularly related to them, which is ever changing. And so what we do is we take care of nature in a way that doesn't allow it to be expended. It always finds more room for praise, new information, for more from it, for more we can continue to gain from it endlessly. And in this way, continue to reveal, by revealing our way of being irrefutably particularly related to it in never changing way, reveal our faces, what we truly uniquely are. Um, let's find another little detail that's connected to. Let's look at a couple of the yeah, the aspects or facets. No, not that. Let's look at actually just some of the explicit variables chosen to make to help us see that he's talking about a metaphysical journey. He's not talking about lilies. He's using lilies. Um, we see that he says very quickly. He talks about power. They that have the power to hurt and will do none. So it's people who have a certain type of power. So we're discussing power, but they do not use it to harm others, even though they could. There's some reason for that. And we're supposed to start looking for it. That do not do the thing they most do show. That is, what they do is not for an immediate gain. It's not what they show other people. They're doing something, and it's for not an immediate gain. What they do is unconditional. They do it unconditional of the circumstances or surroundings or compensation. So unconditionality is included pretty quickly. Who, continuing to discuss this type, this facet, this phase in the metaphysical journey, who, moving others, are themselves as stone. This is a huge, huge point. When we likeness is the seeing the self in others, is meaningful identification with another. And stone is, in literature, in the abstract world, that entity which most particularly embodies irrefutably the distinction or foreignness of the inanimate. It's the thing that least likely can talk, that is least like the self, in that it's completely inanimate. Um, and yet he says, who are themselves as stone. Of course, he's making the comparison to the moved others, the others that they're moving psychologically, emotionally. But we see also the irrefutable double meaning that are themselves as stone, that who, again, who husband nature's riches from expense, who look out and see even that one most different, most distinct, most foreign, most inanimate, look at it completely without assumption. This is why the philosopher's stone exists. It is the stone that speaks to us because we achieve the metaphysical journey, who looks out and sees the stone, sees the thing most distinct, most foreign, most unlikely to speak, and treats it without any assumption, with complete praise, knowing it's part of the miraculous, knowing it's at one with self, knowing it has a limitless potential for meaning and value and truth, who comes into an interaction with that stone as if it could do anything, has limitless potential for meaning and truth and value. And when they do, they reveal the way, they reveal what happens when they selflessly interact with the stone only in that moment. And that meaning, that thing perceived as meaning, as self identifying with the other, it becomes that which is connecting themselves and the stone only in that moment. And in that way, it's what the stone and them both had in that moment. It's a truth that they shared. It's what they could only share. It's something that was generated when only they came into an interaction with each other. Only in that moment. And so it's part of the truth of the stone, that which happened when the stone and the self came into interaction at the moment, and it's part of the self. It's the truth which is that which happened, the consciously witnessable air, the Holy Spirit, the air connecting the two in the infinite plexus with meaning when um, this selfless interaction occurred. Um, and as such, it transforms one into the other. This is the Greek mythological use of transition or metamorphosis. We are transformed, or we become ourselves as stone when we come into this interaction, reveal the unique light, which is the consciously witnessable, meaningful way of being related, irrefutably, particularly related to the other, in again and again in every changing moment, husbanding nature's riches from expense. Um, so we see immediately after that, we see that this likeness, this analogy, this truth that's shared between the two, this transformation of self into the other by revealing this way of being irrefutably particularly connected. Um, this also pervades all religions and fable and mythologies, but um, we see that this one, that are themselves as stone, we are all the other things. We're at one with all other things, and our truth is by our connection to them. That they are unmoved, cold, and to temptation slow. And here's where I was getting that this is an explicit variable. Suddenly we see that now we're going to see words associated with religions, with spiritualities, with ethics and moralities. This hones us in on what we should be thinking. What are we talking about? We're going to get some help. That another way of describing this person is that they are to temptation slow, which also means that this is about humans. This isn't about some unapproachable, mystified God thing. This is about humans engaging God or infinity and engaging it in order to be in interaction with our unique selves and the approachable mundane around us. So we see that they are to temptation slow, which means number one, we're talking about temptation and related things. That's has religious connotations, and number two, that they're slow. It could still happen. They could be tempted, but they are engaging this type of person that's being discussed in this phase of the metaphysical journey. This one is slower. This type of person that's being discussed, this reflection of infinity, this one redefined by the infinite, this one is slow to temptation. They rightly do inherit heaven's graces, and grace is an entire discussion that we're going to have. But I want to say that immediately after, we immediately see heaven. We're talking about heaven and graces. So now we have explicit variables which are saying, hey guys, this is the title of the song here. Don't miss this. All of what we're talking about here is about these metaphysical discussions. And so on and on we go. That's a little bit about 94 connected to these big metaphysical premises and propositions. Um, Hopefully that helps you to look into and look for more and look in an informed way into the artist prophet's work. This one who's um, this creator who's truly interacting with us, just he's interacting so really, so consequentially beyond in the written word, beyond his physical life, that we just got into a 40-minute video about him, um, and what he's saying in his words, which are himself, into posterity, truly interacting. Um, but yeah, we'll go on. We're going to do 29, 55, 71, more of 94, 116, and 121. Um, and all to help to show how the artist prophet creates a symbiosis. A person who requires the abstract world in order to discuss infinity, who interacting, knowing and having reconciled infinity and consciousness, comes into an interaction with the world, a degree and type of interaction, which so reveals to them that unique light, that irrefutably particular way of being newly related and connected to all other things, that they're so inspired that they need the abstract world in order to say it. That when they're in that abstract world, they're also in an infinity including world and come to evidence and experience the consequence of the beyond self, more of the implications of infinity, more empirical evidence of including them into a process, whether it's a physical or an abstract process. And so it goes back into the world, physical world, all the more able to autonomously perpetuate and reconcile the implications of infinity and to justify them in consciousness. Thanks for joining the School of Smirk for another episode of Synthesis, and more to come.